Welcome back to Monster Girl Doctor Anime Review, episode number 3. This is discussing the last 4 episodes of the series, episodes 9 through 12. Yep, and the names of these episodes are The Collapsed Dragon, The Self-Deprecating Cyclops, Ludeworm's Major Operation, and The City of Dragons Doctor. Now, mostly put for these episodes, this is from basically book 3 for the series. Now, I didn't realize this until I read the actual book itself, basically the 3rd book of the series, that initially put last episode, episode 8, technically did start book 3, which I thought was kind of strange. Yes, the actual book itself, the episode adapted from the prelude, and mostly put, basically, for the remaining episodes of the series, they pretty much adapted the book in order, except they took one short story. Yes, it was a short thing involving, basically, Glenn treating Safi for a cold. They kind of moved this toward the end, though the reasoning for this was different and wasn't the book. And basically, the book, because it was the season. That was the simple gist of it. In the case of the anime, it's because of the surgery. Yeah, just because of the surgery that happened to you. I'll discuss that in a minute. Okay. Now, in the case of basically what happens here, thing starts off where last episode left off with Lady Scotty collapsing. Now, here's kind of the strange thing. The way they pronounce her name in the dub, it's pronounced Scotty, as in Scttti, even though her name is spelled Skati. I'm not really sure why in the world that the dubbers decided to pronounce the name this way, but that's the way to pronounce it. So, of course, Glenn goes to see his mentor, Dr. Kaffee, which basically this scene is exactly how it was depicted in the book. And I at least appreciated it, though, that they actually kept a lot of what happened in the book in these episodes. Now, I did initially saw a review online that these episodes cut a lot of the world building stuff out of these episodes. Not really, no. From what I can tell in these episodes, they kept pretty much everything in. I think a couple things were skipped, with the exception of rearranging one scene. Mostly put, it's pretty faithful to the actual book itself, which kudos basically for the studio who made this. So, basically it's revealed that basically Lady Scotty has got a parasite in her. In the book they classify it as a fake heart. Yes. And mostly put, basically what happens from this, basically you have her basically wrapping her tentacles around Dr. Glenn, and basically also kind of in the way giving it to Safi, which I gotta admit, basically they kind of trimmed this down a bit, basically how it's depicted in the actual image they picked from the book. Yeah, with her being covered in Kafi's Kaluthi's tentacles, it's exactly as depicted in the book, except they kind of trimmed down a bit. What it looks like, though, basically praising her for treating her is by putting her tentacles inside her clothes and almost groping her. Okay, in the case of Glenn, just using her suction cups to sort of give Glenn kisses on the cheek. Okay, and they show her afterwards look like she apparently is covered in cream. I'm like, what the heck is this? As far as I can tell, there's no explanation for this at all. Yeah, I don't really know what the explanation for this, so they had to basically go and basically examine her. Okay? Now, they talked to Kunai about this. Now, basically, the Dr. Kaffee, basically, even if Glenn examines her, she won't have a problem with it. Even though, yes, she is she is Lady Sky's primary physician, but she has no problem with Glenn examining her. So, he examines her in her bedroom. Which, yeah, this scene itself is exactly how it's back in the book. Where, in the middle of the night, Glenn, Safi, and Kunai go to Lady Scotty's room. Where Glenn goes in by himself, and like, oh, hi Glenn. Yeah, this is also the first time Glenn actually hears her actual voice. So, he examines her. So he touches the heart. He also touches, apparently, her tail. Also, her wings. Which almost seems like he's doing something inappropriate to her. By the way, not the first woman he's done to in the series. So, after a while, basically, that's Kunai thought that basically do something inappropriate to her. Not really. Basically, he was doing what he could. And basically sees that this tumor is basically, like, where in the world she got this tumor from is not really explained. The book itself doesn't really explain exactly where the heck she got this from. Yeah, that's something quite interesting, though. Both the anime and the actual book never explain where she gets this tumor from. She just magically has it for some reason. Or at least a parasite. Yes, they assume it's because basically she decided to, let's just say, fly down, or at least basically be in this human form. It's assumed that, but it's not really delved into at all. I don't know if they delve into this in the future books, because I've only read the first 3 books. So, they talked to Dr. Cthulhu about it, and she agrees she'll do the surgery if in fact they can convince Lady Sky to do it. Okay, but we need tools, stuff like that. It's like, I'll see someone who could do, like, thread that out pretty quickly. And he's like, okay, I know exactly who can help us. So, Arachnia. Yep, go visit her. So, after some convincing, and of course, her co-worker is like, man, he's such a handsome doctor. So, after some convincing, she does agree to actually do it. Like, okay, so, tools. Go see the Cyclops. Yeah, this basically leads into the second episode of this arc. Well, technically it's the third. Where we get a chance to see the Cyclops again. Now, she was seen briefly back in the pilot episode. Yeah, she's been miraculously been absent. I think her name is Mimi, Yeah, where they actually spent a whole episode with her, which I appreciate the fact they do this. Because, interesting though, they actually don't bother doing anything much in the books, basically, I've read. It's like, we have a brief scene with her at the end of episode 1, and then never seeing it until this very episode. Glenn says hi to her, despite the fact the last that they saw each other, she was perfectly normal. And here, she's like very shy, and they basically walk to go see her boss, which basically also ends up basically removing her loincloth, which apparently shows off her butt. That's what it looks like to me. They said, oh yeah, it's her underwear. Okay. So, they go see her boss. And, okay, basically it's not about the previous payment of the tools. That's nothing to do with this at all. Don't worry. And, of course, basically order these particular tools. And, like, okay, but Neil's been kind of tough. And how much time? 1 month. Okay. So, and, of course, Mimi is charged with, well, making needles. And she does, though she has a collapsing due to apparently heat stroke. Though it's later revealed she actually has some motion sickness. Yes, motion sickness. So, Glenn goes to basically, now Ilya basically contacts him and has him basically brought there. Of course, this is the third time he went there, because the previous time with Dr. Kula and charged with the prototype tools, and she also has this habit of biting her tentacles, which Glenn tells, you should probably not do that. And she says, this helps me deal with stress. And also, cutting off your tentacles is not a good idea. There's something involving her tentacles that actually do cut out here, which is quite shocking they cut this out. Yes, they cut out, there's actually a scene later on after the surgery, which I'll get to the surgery. I'm like, why the heck would they cut this out for? It's so odd they would do this. I'll get to it. So, basically, like, they make needles, and of course, Mimi collapses, and of course, Glenn to check her breathing, he proceeds to use parasites to open her top. Which, of course, he does get called out on this. Lucky enough, Arachnia is there to make her a new shirt. Nice of her to do that. And then, of course, after basically diagnosing, calming her down with some herbs, and of course, with new shirt on, like they eventually convinced to figure out a way to make needles, use steel wool with this little spin thing, and make needles that way. Okay. And after multiple times of asking her, eventually they get to a scene. Now, this scene plays out exactly how it's depicted in the actual book itself, except they cut a line here. Yes. You're probably thinking, wait, they actually got a line from the scene? Yes, they did. Because Glenn goes visit Lady Scotty in what looks like to be the top of a tower. And basically she says, Kunai, pick me up. And then she says, oh, Kunai is not here. In the actual episode, they cut that line just so... My guess is the reason why they cut that line is to not depict Lady Scotty as being stupid. Which kind of the writer kind of depicted as this in this scene as being kind of stupid. So, Glenn picks her up, and of course tells Glenn picks her up, like tells her basically that she should live, that go on dates, stuff like that, be a normal person. Like, okay, I'll go through the surgery. And also tells her to put her down, and then of course, well, then we have the surgery in episode 11. Yes, episode 11 has the surgery to save Lady Dracona. Also, I should point out, though, in the initial scene when he first examines her, she's wearing a nightie and she's in underwear. In the book, apparently, here's the thing. In the actual book, she actually removes the thing. In the anime, she just opens up the front. That's all she does. Now, here's the thing. When they show her in the very next episode, for some reason, they don't cover her up for some reason. And also a flashback of her looks like she's naked. Apparently. So, oh yeah, because she's a fire dragon. So apparently her organs are protected from the fire stuff in her body. Okay. So they proceed with the surgery. After some practicing, of course, with Arachnia, they do the surgery and, of course, the anesthesia, which they actually had. They had Safi get the anesthesia, which happened to be freaking alcohol of all things, from the Far East, which were Glenn and Safi from. Okay. They also cut a line here about Glenn's father. The fact that Safi knew about the man's reputation, and the fact he helped ended the actual war itself. It's interesting that they actually cut out that particular bit. I mean, yeah, cut out the stupid thing, that's fine. But why cut out the line about Glenn's father? That made no sense at all. I mean, as far as the book is concerned, Lady Scotty never met Glenn's father. Safi did, but they cut that out for some reason. I'm not really sure why, but they did. But even though the proceeding itself proceeds exactly as depicted in the manga, well, not the manga, the actual book itself, even though they cut a couple lines, one I thought was necessary, the other one I thought was not very necessary at all. I mean, what's wrong with keeping in basically mentioning about Glenn's father? Which, yes, I don't really know why they kept the piece of dialogue, but they did. So, the surgery was successful. Of course, Kunai's sitting outside, and also, Dr. Cthulhu's tentacles start burning. Yes, they burn. Which, of course, they cut the scene that happens later on with her because it seems as though she just disappears right after the surgery. As far as I can tell, there's no real explanation of why they cut the scene out. Well, I can tell anyways. Where, after the surgery, so she actually cut off these tentacles, and she thought Glenn would eat the damn things. She basically offered a couple times when she was at the ironworks shop, where she offered Glenn to basically bite her tentacles. What tentacles? He kept politely telling her, no, I'm not interested in doing that. Which is, it's not part of my body, so don't have me do that. Yes, and they also do keep in, from this book, they do keep in the fact that Dr. Cthulhu had a thing for him when she was a student. She also mentioned apparently Glenn has actually gotten older, which from what I can tell he hasn't. He still looks like he's in his late teens. Maybe it's how she thinks of her as a professional. Of course, there's no mention about shut down the clinic here in the actual anime, which I'm kind of glad they cut that out because I was kind of dumb mentioning that about when they graduated. There's a little about the clinic here where if there's anything wrong, she'll shut down the clinic, which she's director of a hospital. Even though, yes, these two are former students, she technically has no authority to shut down a freaking clinic. So I'm glad they cut this because it's kind of dumb to have her picked this way. So after, of course, turning on the opportunity to eat his former teacher's meat, well, her tentacles. Then, of course, the very next day, it's just basically a normal day at the office, kind of in the ways. And, of course, they also cut out the bit, basically, where Lady Dracona's speech is slightly longer in the actual book itself. In the anime, it's really quick. There's a quick hello, and then she goes to visit the doctor. In the actual book itself, it was mentioned that she was planning on retiring. But, basically, she turned it down. And for some reason, they have her back at the expedition where she collapsed. Of course, she took off her veil, which, cool that she did this. And, of course, the brief council scene in the actual episode itself, that's mostly the same. I don't remember if they cut anything here. Not that I got to anyways. Also, when she runs into Glenn, she calls him Big Brother, which, that's kind of odd. Like, oh, you saved my life. And, of course, she decides to do a peep show under her outfit. Like, oh, he just, ladies, can you please button up your outfit, please? It's like, okay, if you do it. He's like, fine. He buttons it up, be polite. And, of course, just by the reason why he's here, because he's out making houses, of course, after the really interesting scene of him treating Safi's cold, which apparently she had like a little thing on the bottom of her tongue, which he treated with honey. Which, this is seen directly from the book itself. No really major change here, except they don't mention stuff about the tongue be inside her throat. Yes, they actually cut out that little bit. That's something probably animators, basically viewers, probably don't really need to know about snakes. Now, yes, I'm sure for a fact that basically the way they mentioned about snakes in the Arctic book, that's really true. From what I can tell anyways. Yes, the way they mentioned about the biology about snakes is scientifically true. Yes, it is scientifically true about what Glenn mentioned here. I get the reason why they cut it, because they probably cut it because it wasn't necessary at all. It wasn't, let's say, cut for time. I think it was probably cut due to the fact that it was not necessary to know about biology very much when it comes to snakes. I mean, we're here to watch a story, not basically a science lecture. So I get the reason why they cut that, because I'm sure the animators did not want people to get bored with a lecture about snakes. So he treats her basically a little ailment with honey mixed with some antibiotics, which of course basically the scene is still presented the same, where he grabs her tongue, and of course it's a bit more extended than the book, which I kind of get why they probably had to move the story forward. So he goes and makes a house call. Who he makes a house call to, they don't really say here. I don't remember who was in the book. And that's where he runs into Leah Scotty, just by sheer coincidence. Where he sees, oh, wheel on her carriage broke down. And more coincidence, May just happened to be walking by. And after May fixes the carriage, after talking to him for a bit, and then of course, well, offers a reward. 2 barrels of wine. Lulu briefly shows up here. She shows up later on. And, of course, apparently Illy has a problem with Mamie because of the way her eyebrow is. So, oh yeah, apparently it's mentioned her father makes these carriages. Like, that's interesting. Well, it's interesting they kept that from the book. And, of course, Lady Sky goes off with Kunai. And, of course, they're seen later on in the episode. So, he goes to make his house call. Mamie, of course, is getting bored. Because he had to watch the wine. Lewis, oh, is that for you? Like, no, it's for something else. Long story. Of course, Lewis has to leave. Of course, he comes back. And just by sheer coincidence, Titania is there too. So, transport the wine to his place, to the clinic. And, of course, Arachne is there, where she proceeds to help Safi get dressed so she gets actually feeling better. So, like, right after she gets dressed, she basically just tries to be home for dinner. Of course, Glenn mentioned he was home for dinner. And, well, he just happened to run into, just by sheer coincidence on the way back, the Minotaur and his wife in the pilot episode, which this is interesting. Yes, and then of course run a bunch of people over the course of the series. There's a brief scene with the giant, the giant from the last set of episodes, where she briefly appears as one brief scene in Heartbeat Village, where she apparently found this whole bunch of food, just gave it to Heart Village as thank you, basically for helping her out. So Illy Brink with a few harpies just come by, and of course they all fawn over Glenn because how handsome he is. Safi, of course, is jealous, of course. And then, like, okay, let's just have it where we just have this massive picnic, which, from what I can tell, this kind of is still the same from the book. And, like, okay, of course, they have this wonderful scene, which I'm pretty happy they kept this in, where you have Arachnia, Safi, and Titania, where they have the scene where we're at a pub. Now, this scene is exactly what it's picked in the book, and I appreciate them keeping this in because it's good character stuff. And they bring this up later about the fact these three are rivals for Glenn's love. And now we have a new person here. Rival for Glenn's love. Lady Scotty. Who, now, in the book, it's mentioned she's actually a thing for him. Just calls him Big Brother. And it's a funny little bit because he's so popular. And, of course, we have the four girls just collapse right on top of him, which I think is so hilarious. And that's where the episode ends. And, of course, a quick narration like, yeah, our adventures are just beginning. And that's pretty much how the first season ends the show. I wouldn't be surprised if we get season 2, but all in all, these episodes are fantastic. Really good. And unlike some anime I've watched, they keep a lot in. Now, yes, they kept some dialogue here and there. Mostly put scenes are exactly the same. They only cut one scene here, and now it's with Dr. Cthulhu. Aside from that, that's pretty much it. Like, yes, they cut some lines here and there, but they only cut one scene, which is fine. Okay. I guess something to be sacrificed for this series, for these episodes, but this is a great series. I really wish there's going to be a season 2. There's nothing that says there can't be a season 2. I mean, the series this season only concluded just a few months ago, so I would not be surprised, though, if we actually have a season 2. I hope so. If it does, it probably just go from books 4 through 6. If you're curious to, like, is the number source material to a season 2? The answer is yes. There is exactly about 5 more books. Well, technically 6, if you include Volume 0. I would think that season 2, if there is season 2, they're probably just going to adapt books 4 through 6. And just wait until whenever they release book 9 to do a third season of the show. That's a possibility. But final thoughts basically on Monster Doctor. It's a great series. I do recommend checking it out. Though I would probably recommend not show it for kids because I don't know if they'll like seeing girls who are monsters basically falling in love with a human. Now, yes, the series basically is similar to that Matsusume. But the thing is, difference is that, well, biggest difference is the main characters get a different profession. Either, yes, characters are similar to Matsusume because the writer of the series is a fan of the anime. Fine, whatever. But at least it makes changes. For one thing, the characters are not depicted as carbon copies as they are depicted in the Air series. Like, for instance, Safi, for example, who is similar to Mia from Matsusume. Both on the main character. They both love basically wrapping their body around him. Biggest difference between two of them is that even though they're both Limas, Safi is an albino, which she can't stand sunlight. The other one is perfectly fine with sunlight. And that's set in modern Japan, while this show is set sort of like in an alternate universe. Not really know exactly where this series is set, but it just said just a fictional world. That's basically how I picked this one. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's particularly it for this particular review. Yeah, shocking that this one actually went almost 25 minutes because the first one went 20 minutes. The last one that was actually shorter than this one. This is the longest one in the whole series, so I talk about this show itself. Now, what am I going to do next? Well, it's a toss-up between Assassination Classroom. That's one of the series I'm going to do. The other course is, and this will be a surprise to people, To Love Ru. Yes, both series, I'm actually getting pretty close to wrapping up the original manga, both of them. So I figured that I would toss up between the two of them. And of course, I'm also planning on watching, well, first reading the books first for Absolute Duo. Yes, I'll be doing that one. Yeah, and as for if I'll get a chance to start it this year, I don't know. It just depends. Yeah, but, well, it's in kind of late anyways. I gotta go work tomorrow. So, tomorrow, expect to see review for Black Clover and discussion of the anime I watched this year. Basically, to talk about the last. This has basically been this is the 45th series of anime I reviewed just this year. That are basically anime I've never reviewed before. That are not, let's say, a re-review like it was with Naruto and Naruto Shippuden and One Piece. Yes, a re-review. Also, I should mention that I did finish up watching Doctor Who Series 11, and of course today I finished up Series 12. Both good. I may discuss them at some point. It's possible. So yeah, that's it for Sick of You. So you see you tomorrow for Black Clover and Anime in 2020. Bye.